What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Team selection videos are back for another season, so every single game week I'm going to take you through how my team is looking, thoughts on chips, transfers, captaincy, all that good stuff, and I'll keep you up to date in terms of how I'm doing with overall rank and all that good stuff. So let's see how I'm setting up for game week 1. So as always, let's start with the defensive players. And by the way, I'll be doing one of these team selection videos every single game week throughout the season. So if you want to follow along, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's completely free to do, takes 2 seconds, and really does help me out. My goalkeeper combination is Sanchez and Dubravka. Dubravka is a pick you're going to see quite a lot, super popular. 4 million at Burnley, looks to be coming in as their number 1. Hasn't played for Burnley yet, but their final pre-season game was quite close to when he signed. And also, just before he left Newcastle, Eddie Howe said that he had a minor injury, so potentially that's affecting him. But ultimately, we will hear from Scott Parker this week to tell us when he's going to be available. And there's no other playing £4 million goalkeepers this season as it stands. So he's just an easy one to put on the bench. Most weeks I'm not going to play him anyway. But when I do decide to bench boost, I've got a second goalkeeper that I can use, but at the same time, he's not making me have to spend more money on my bench than I would want to. My main goalkeeper is Sanchez. He's been in my team for a while now. I am starting to waver a little bit on him because Colwill is now out for pretty much the whole season. Chalobah picked up an injury in pre-season as well, although it's thought that that one won't be quite so bad. I'm sure Chelsea will strengthen in that department in the transfer window, but it's a little bit of a worry. The thing with Sanchez is he's quite a flexible pick in that if I don't know exactly when I want a wild card, he's a good short-term pick, but also a good long-term pick as well. And he only costs 5 million. And I do rate the Chelsea defence generally, even though it might be slightly weaker with the injuries that they've got. So if I decided to wildcard in 7, great. Sanchez's first 6 are pretty good. If I decide to wildcard in 12 or 13, well, that's fine. Sanchez's fixtures after game week 6 are still not that bad. So that's why I quite like him. If I was to move him on, I quite like Sells for the first 6 weeks and go for that Forest double up, but that probably would push me more towards an early wildcard. So Sanchez is in. He's getting close to being locked into this team for me. The back 3, Pedro Porro, James Tarkowski, and Nico Williams. I don't have a £6 million defender. It does worry me a little bit because to get up to a £6 million defender, I'd have to make a downgrade somewhere else. So that's 2 transfers if I do it after the season has started. You've got Frimpong, Aït-Nouri, Van Dijk, Gabriel, Cucurella, lots of good options. But ultimately, if I want the attack that I've got, there's no more money to go around, so I can't afford a £6 million defender. Loads of you will have seen during pre-season I've had Van Dijk in my team quite a lot. This is not a reaction to what happened in the Community Shield. I still think a Liverpool defender is a good pick, but I just feel like they're not essential. So if I'm happy with the attack and I can't upgrade one of my 5.5s to Van Dijk, then I just go without him. And if I'm ever going to back against him, why not do it when they've got Newcastle away in game week 2 and then Arsenal at home in game week 3? I could always look to bring them in later on. So that's why I've got someone like James Tarkowski instead of Van Dijk or instead of a Frimpong or Aït-Nouri, whoever it might be. And also Tarkowski's floor is quite good in terms of the points he could score because he's got those defensive contribution points in his locker and he was the best defender for them last year. So he's going to consistently pick up an extra 2 points. And if you tie that in with some clean sheets in their opening good fixtures, he's going to be a really solid pick at 5.5. So I really like him in the team. Pedro Porro is almost becoming a lock as well. I feel like I've got to have a Spurs defender for game week 1, Burnley at home. Romero and Van der Ven might be better value, but ultimately Porro is the best of the lot, and that's what you pay the money for. He's more attacking and he can pick up defensive contributions as well. And with no James Maddison, he's going to be on some set pieces. So all round, I quite like him. And a bit like Sanchez, he's quite a flexible pick in that I could just play him in game week 1 against Burnley and then bench him in game week 2 against City away and then play him in most game weeks after that in the short term because Spurs fixtures are quite good. Or I could sell him to Munoz quite quickly. So Porro to Munoz in game week 2 where Munoz has Forest at home, or make that same transfer in game week 4 when Crystal Palace have got Sunderland at home. That's on my mind. Now, usually, I'm not someone that likes to book in early transfers like that. I prefer just to wait and see what happens. But when you see the rest of this team, it's pretty much all guaranteed starters who all have good minutes. So unless I get really unlucky and run into injuries and suspensions early on, I'm not going to be forced into making lots of transfers. And I'm someone that's usually quite patient with the players that I've picked. So I've got that luxury of being able to do Porro to Munoz if I want to do it. And if not, I just hold him. So really happy with that pick. Nico Williams is just great value at Forest. Murillo is the better pick if you've got the money, but Nico Williams can pick up defensive contribution points, and he's a bit more attacking than Aina. So for 5 million with the fixtures Forest have got to open the season, I really like him. Forest are being linked to another fullback like Leif Davis at Ipswich. I'm not sure that transfer will happen, but if it does, that does put some threat on Nico Williams' minutes. He could move to right back, but obviously you've got competition from Aina as well. So that would worry me slightly, but I just think at this point he's played so much in pre-season, he's going to be first choice going into the season. And after the first 6 game weeks, I'd probably look to move him on anyway. So Nico Williams at 5 million, great value. Anderson is just in as a bench option who has some good opening fixtures. I can use him in if I want to. Only 4.5 million. Fulham's defensive numbers for expected goals conceded were very good last year. If they can translate that into some clean sheets, he'll be excellent value. And he's brilliant for defensive contributions. So if I had to play him against Brighton away game week 1, Man United at home game week 2, that's fine. And if not, he just stays on the bench and it's Leeds at home in 4 and Brentford at home in 5. So he's got plenty of use early on. And then Esteve from Burnley is a nailed on 4 million defender. Now I could, because I've got Dubravka, go for Rodon or Goodmanson from Leeds instead. But I think when you look at Burnley's fixtures, there's a few opportunities to potentially bench boost them. Sunderland at home in 2, Forest at home in 5, and Leeds at home in 8. And don't get me wrong, the idea of bench boosting 2 Burnley defenders doesn't sound ideal, but it lets me have a cheap bench, but still have playing players that I could use with the bench boost. I don't necessarily want to have loads of expensive players on my bench. I don't think it's worth it. So again, it leaves me flexible in terms of when I might want to play that chip. So if I'm looking at this defence, probably locked in players right now: Sanchez, Dubravka, Esteve, Nico Williams and Porro. Anderson could change. Tarkowski might go up to a 6. But overall, I'm liking how that defence looks. So most of my midfield is absolutely stacked. 4 of the 5 players are Salah, Palmer, Fernandes and Wirtz. And then I've got Anderson as my 5.5 from Nottingham Forest. With Salah, he's pretty much locked into this team. I do not see me going without him. In terms of my official teams during pre-season, he's never left my draft. Of course, I've had a look at Haaland-only drafts. I've looked at drafts with no Salah, no Haaland. But ultimately, in the teams that I think I'm actually going to go with, Salah's always been in there, and I just do not see that changing ahead of the deadline. I know he didn't play that amazing in the Community Shield. People are now worried that he won't fit in with all the new players they've got. He's playing too wide. All the usual stuff that comes out when a player blanks. Ultimately, we've got 8 seasons to go on at Liverpool. He's been very good. I expect him to be very good this year as well, and he's going to be my captain against Bournemouth at home in game week 1. I don't really have too many doubts about that. And ultimately, if I do go to Haaland, I'm only saving 0.5 million. So it just makes me less and less keen on doing that. So I do not see Salah leaving the draft. Never say never. Nothing is locked in until 6:30 on Friday, but he's going to be in. Palmer is pretty much a lock as well. He's been in basically every single draft I've made. There is part of me slightly wavering, like maybe 1 or 2% on him, because ultimately, he was pretty bad in terms of FPL output at the end of last season, and that might carry on into this season. Yes, he played very well in the Club World Cup final, but hasn't been getting many goals and assists outside of that. But ultimately, if I drop him, I'm going to Saka, and the only reason I can see to go Saka instead is because of Leeds at home in game week 2, where I'd want to captain him. Outside of that, the fixtures for the first 6 are just much better for Palmer, and he only costs 0.5 million more. And ultimately, when you look at his underlying data, the fact that he always plays, he's on penalties, he's going to be another 200 plus point player this season. It just depends where the points come from. So last year, he got a lot at the start and then not many at the end. Will it be a bit more balanced throughout the season? I don't know. But he is going to get tons of points this year, and I'm hoping it'll be at the start. That's why he's in my team. Bruno Fernandes is pretty much a lock at this point. I do not see me going without him, but I'm not as confident as I was last year. Like, it's an interesting one. Last year, he was in my team. I was quite happy with him. Everyone else hated him. This year, I'm much less sure about him, but lots of other people are picking him. Ultimately, he's going to tick over with points no matter where he plays in that Man United team. He's got penalties. He always plays 90. He can get defensive contributions. He's still going to get forward if he's playing in central midfield. Assists are there, goals as well. Yes, it's 9 million. It's not a price where I think he's essential. Far from it. If anything, he might be slightly too expensive, but I just think I'd go with him and decide what to do afterwards. Like, if I get to game week 4 or 5 and I want to sell him, then that's a pretty decent way to get money elsewhere. downgrade him to a 6.5 and move that cash to a different position. And in game week 3, I might even captain him. Salah's got Arsenal at home that week. Bruno Fernandes has got Burnley at home. Like right now, he might be my captain. So he's a lock, and I think he's got a lot of avenues to points. And then Wirtz, really for me, it's Wirtz versus Watkins. That's the main dilemma that I have right now. I just think that Liverpool are going to be extremely good again this season. He's absolutely nailed in that team. I've got no doubts about that. And obviously he's going to play in an attacking role. I kind of just want him in from the start. Like Marmoush could be great as well, but I'm always going to be slightly concerned about whether he's in the team for Man City. And if I drop down to a 7.5, I'm just not keen on Gibbs White or Eze or Gakpo, for example, because Gakpo could be great to start with, but I just don't see his minutes as secure longer term, so I'd rather just pay the extra for Wirtz. And there's lots of good 6.5s, like Sarr, for example, at Crystal Palace and Jai at Everton. I could go for one of them and move to Watkins, but right now I just really like the expensive midfield. And then Anderson is my favourite 5.5. Like everyone else, there is some temptation to move to Reinders at Man City. Obviously, he got that brace in that only pre-season game, but he's not guaranteed to always play in that number 10 position. It might be that he plays deeper, especially with Rodri out until at least after the first international break. And Anderson should be nailed. Pretty good minutes. Great for defensive contributions and might get the odd attack in return. I do look at that. I think it's a very boring pick. I do understand it. But for me, he's one of those players that I just don't worry about for the first 6 game weeks. I'm trying to leave myself in a position where I can be really flexible with transfers. There's no players I look at so far where I think they're going to cause me an issue unless they get injured. And therefore, if something happens in the first few weeks where I think I've got to have that player, I've got so many routes to bring those players in. Like Salah to Haaland, for example, Bruno to Gyökeres. It's just 2 moves. Like I think it's set up in a great way. And that's what I like about Anderson. Every time the City team sheet comes out, I'm going to be looking to see if Reinders starts. With Forest, less so with Anderson. I think he's pretty safe in that team. I'd love to have a more attacking player like Arias at Wolves or Marlon at Villa, for example. Maybe Reinders at Man City. But Anderson is just my kind of pick. He's going to tick over with points, and that's probably enough for me at 5.5. Then up front, I've got Jean-Philippe Mateta from Crystal Palace and Jurgen Strand-Larsen from Wolves as my main 2 forwards in a 3-5-2. And on the bench, it's Mark Guiu, who's moved from Chelsea to Sunderland and only cost 4.5 million. For what it's worth, it is very, very unlikely that he starts for Sunderland in game week 1. In fact, I don't think we'll see him start until after the international break. My ender will be their first choice, number 9. And it might be that Guiu just never breaks into the team. But for 4.5 million, I just need minutes off the bench. That will do. The odd 1 or 2 pointer here or there is enough because most of the time he's going to be sat third on my bench. I won't start to play him or move him up the bench until he starts starting for Sunderland. And the long-term plan with the bench boost would be, if he starts getting regular minutes, I bench boost with him in the team. Or if he doesn't, at some point when I decide to bench boost, I downgrade someone else, let's say Bruno Fernandes to a 6.5. That gives me 2.5 million to play with. All of a sudden, that's Mark Guiu up to a Evan Nielsen, for example. Right? It might not be him, but just as an example, that could then let me bench boost, hopefully before I wildcard, and then I wildcard out of it and put him back on the bench. So I'm not necessarily looking to definitely bench boost game week 2 because I don't think Mark Guiu will be playing by then, but it just leaves my options open later on. In terms of the 2 forwards I've picked to start most weeks, Mateta is a little bit of a reaction from what happened in the Community Shield, but I do think we learned something in that game. He took a penalty ahead of Eze. Eze then missed in the shootout, and Mateta scored again. Now, for what it's worth, I do think those 2 players will share penalties, but I went into this season thinking that Eze was clearly first choice. Now I don't think that. I think it's probably Mateta. Nketiah is also injured, so his minutes should be pretty good. Crystal Palace do have European matches this season, which is a little bit of a worry because we don't know how they react to that. Mateta might need to be kind of managed through all those games, but ultimately Glasner does not rotate that much. So he's going to start. I think after Chelsea away, the next 4 fixtures are not that bad for a Palace attacker. It's Forest at home in 2, and then it's Villa away in 3, Sunderland at home in 4, and then West Ham away in 5. I think that's okay. And then by the time we get to game week 6, 7, I'm probably looking to use a chip anyway. So I'm basically struggling with forwards. If I don't have Watkins, which is difficult to do with Fernandes and Wirtz, there's not really many others that I like. Like if Solanke starts in the Super Cup against PSG, I might go to him for game week 1. because the fixtures are good and he's going to be on penalties, in my opinion, with no Son. But he hasn't played many pre-season matches. So if he starts on the bench, I don't know if I'll risk it. João Pedro, I think maybe I'm underrating at this point, but I do think early subs are going to happen with the lap waiting. And I don't think João Pedro will always move to the number 10 position. That worries me a little bit. He doesn't have penalties either. Visser might leave. I can't go for him. Chris Wood has got the fixtures, but I'm just waiting for Forest's goals to go down, and that's what's happened in pre-season. So he worries me a bit. So the 7.5s are like fine, but I can't get excited about any of them. 6.5, I like Strand Larsen, but I can't have two Strand Larsens. Welbeck at Brighton's okay. And then you go down to the 6s. I've had Thiago in quite a bit. I'm still tempted by him because I think Visser will leave, and I think Thiago will be first choice number 9 on penalties. Maybe people have just put me off because of what's happened in pre-season. I don't know. Fulkrug's okay, but just none of them are that exciting. Like forwards, I think this year, at least for game week 1, to me, feel a bit rubbish. Right, Haaland's okay, but he's so expensive. I can't have him and Salah. The draft just wouldn't look that good. Isak is a clear avoid. So I almost default to going to Watkins because I don't like the rest of them. But for this draft, I wanted Wirtz, so that's why Mateta is in. So I might move him as my 7.5, but I think he's a better option than maybe people are giving him credit for. And then Strand Larsen, he's not that exciting at 6.5, but he's nailed on. He got like 14 attack and I think it was 14. Let me just double check that. 14 goals, 4 assists in 30 starts last year. And I think he's going to get penalties as well. That's not a guarantee, by the way. It could be Arias, but I think it'll be Strand Larsen. So I think this team looks really strong. Am I happy with the forwards? No. But I don't think I'm going to be happy with any of them unless I can go to Watkins. But if I go to Watkins, I've got to downgrade elsewhere, and I'll talk about that in a second. The defenders are strong. Lots of them are good for defensive returns and or attacking potential. Sanchez is a good short and long-term pick. The midfield is solid. There's points all over the place in that. I think it looks good. And more importantly, after the issues I had last year with Nkunku and Kwanzaa, who I had to transfer out straight away, in my opinion, every single one of these players is guaranteed to start, and the minutes are good, and they've got lots of avenues to points, apart from Mark Guiu and Dubravka potentially short-term, but they're going to sit on the bench anyway. They're not going to cause me any problems, I don't think. So I'm in a position where I can roll lots of transfers and just make my moves when I need to, and maybe make the odd luxury move like Porro to Munoz. So that's the main team. I think it looks good, but let's look at some alternatives. Don't forget you can get your team rated for free before the season starts using the My Team tool over on Fantasy Football Hub. Just click that link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. And the great thing is you can just upload a screenshot of your team to get it populated in the tool. Then I just like to click Save Plan, Optimize, and then look at one game week only. And that looks pretty solid for game week 1, 95% team rating. And if you want to use the rest of the features of this tool and all the other tools that Hub have, you can sign up. And if you sign up and don't win your mini league, you will get your money back. Terms and conditions do apply for that. I'll leave them in the link in the description below. But what I also like to do is just go through future weeks, just click optimize and see how my defense is set up. So like I said, I could bench Pedro Porro in game week 2 and maybe even Nico Williams against Palace away and not have him up against Mateta and just play Esteve against Sunderland at home, Tarkowski against Brighton at home, and Anderson against Man United at home. Anderson would be up against Bruno, but both players are pretty good for defensive contributions, and obviously Bruno can get me attack and returns as well. And I just go through future weeks and just see how it looks. So game week 3, Nico Williams, West Ham at home, Pedro Porro, Bournemouth at home, Tarkowski against Wolves away. And if I didn't want to sell Porro to Munoz, I know he's got a good fixture after game week 2. So if you want to get your team rated for free, link in the description below or scan that QR code on screen. So this is basically the Ollie Watkins variation of the draft that I've just shown you. So instead of Mateta up front, it's Watkins, and alongside him, it's still Strand Larsen. To fund that Watkins move, I've done Wirtz to Sarr. So that's my 6.5 million midfielder, Sarr from Crystal Palace. And then actually there's 0.5 million left over. So I've done Tarkowski to Virgil van Dijk. As I said at the start of the video, more than happy to have a £6 million defender if the money is there. Potentially, if he was fit, I could just keep Tarkowski and then go for Rodgers over Sarr. But Rodgers didn't feature in either of the last 2 pre-season games for Villa, and he does have a bit of a knock. So we'll have to wait and see whether Unai Emery passes him fit in the press conference. I really like Sarr, though, at 6.5. I've kind of gone between him and Njai in a lot of my drafts. Njai's nailed on penalties at Everton, not a bad pick. I'm not sure he's going to play 90 minutes all that often, especially if they keep signing more attackers, but he's a good pick. But Sarr's underlying numbers were so good last year. And ultimately, he got 15 attacking returns in 30 starts. I think people have just got a bias against him because towards the end of the season, lots of people went Sarr and Mateta and Eze smashed it. And they got frustrated with Sarr. But I think he's a good price. He's underrated and his ownership is quite low. But there is potential to go to Njai or Rodgers. And then obviously Watkins up front is great. It does feel like overthinking not to have a Villa attacker. And Watkins is the best one. Because the first 7 game weeks are so good. You just put him in and leave him. I don't see his minutes being that much of a concern. They don't have much competition for that spot. In the past, Unai Emery has kind of, subbed him early and benched him at times for Duran or Rashford. Neither of those players are there. Is that going to happen with Marlon or Gesson? I think probably not. I guess there's a slight risk. But ultimately, Watkins just feels like a good pick. So it's just a question of, is Van Dijk, Sarr, Watkins better than Tarkowski, Wirtz and Mateta? I think it's really close. That's why I've had to talk about 2 drafts in this video, because it could go either way. The other option, of course, is to simply just have them all. So in this team, I've got that midfield of Salah, Palmer, Fernandes and Wirtz, but I've also got Watkins up front alongside Strand Larsen still. Now, to achieve that, I have had to make a couple of sacrifices. So instead of Anderson from Nottingham Forest for 5.5 million, I've got Dewsbury Hall at Everton for 5 million. Now, there is a world where Dewsbury Hall ends up being the better pick anyway because of the money you save, but also the fact he's probably going to play primarily as a number 10. And I'm quite confident in his minutes. I'm just not 100% confident, which is why he doesn't make the main team. But for this one, to get Watkins and Wirtz, he's in. And then instead of Van Dijk or Tarkowski, I've got a 4.5 million defender. Now, for this team, I've gone for Richards from Crystal Palace. There's still rumours Gay might leave. So if they bring a new centre-back in, Richards still should be pretty nailed, and he's not bad for defensive contributions. But if I wanted to play it ultra safe, I could just go for like a Konza or a Wan-Bissaka, maybe Dorgu as a wing-back or from Man United, or Juve from West Ham, for example. There's other 4.5s I could pick, but they're the 2 main sacrifices. So I'd have to play Anderson against Brighton away in game week 1. So it still looks pretty good. I think Sanchez, Porro, Anderson, Williams, back line, basically back 3 in my goalkeeper. Salah, Palmer, Fernandes, Wirtz, Dewsbury Hall against Leeds away. Then Watkins and Strand Larsen. And my bench is still Dubravka, Richards or a different 4.5, Esteve and Mark Guiu. I still think that looks really strong. And if Dewsbury Hall does end up being that, Rodgers pick from last season, that's really strong. And it only needs to last me a few weeks. Because I will be patient with most of these players. I will be able to roll transfers without injuries. And if Dewsbury Hall just looks like a dud, I downgrade someone and just upgrade him to someone different. So I do Watkins to Mateta, and then I do Dewsbury Hall up to a 6.5 or something like that. So I don't hate it, but I think if I'm being realistic about the type of team I will go into the deadline with, it's going to be that first team I showed you. But this one is definitely on my mind in quite a big way. So because we've got double chips this season, I thought I'd run you through when I'm thinking about playing the chips for my own team. So for those of you that don't know, triple captain, bench boost, free hit and wild card, we've got one of each of those to play in the first half of the season and one of each of them to play in the second half as well. So the way that I've set my team up, the main weeks to think about are game week 6, because I've got no Man City players and that week they play Burnley at home. So I'm going to want to captain Haaland. Game week 7, Arsenal fixture swing. As it stands, I've got no Arsenal players whatsoever. I think game week 2 against Leeds at home is great. Outside of that first 6, the fixtures are not amazing. Game week 7 is when they get better. And then game week 13, Liverpool and Man City fixture swings. Now, I don't know exactly which chip I'm going to play, but I'm pretty confident around game week 6 and 7, there's going to be a chip activated for my team. And that's why I'm trying to set up initially to be quite flexible. Think about the first 6 weeks, but not much beyond that, because I probably will end up playing a chip. So option 1 would be to dead end game week 6, buy Haaland, maybe 1 or 2 other Man City players, and then wildcard out of it in 7, drop some of those Man City players and load up on Arsenal as well. Dead end basically means that you don't think about moves past that week. So I'd only think about the first 6 weeks because I'm going to wildcard out of it. And then free hit, I would just save for a future week. I'm not quite sure when I would use it right now, but I don't need to be quite sure about that. I can just wildcard in 7 and figure out the free hit later. Option 2 is to free hit in 6. So get to game week 6, go Haaland, Marmoush and a defender, for example, captain Haaland, get 3 Bournemouth for Leeds away, and make sure I've got 3 Nottingham Forest for Sunderland at home. And then I would save the wild card for 12 or 13 for the Liverpool and Man City fixture swings. My only slight issue with that strategy is, because I don't know for sure that's what I want to do, I'm probably already going to have 2 Forest players, so I'm not making a massive gain there, but I am saving my wild card and getting 3 Man City players. So I do quite like it. And then hopefully, because my team is so well set up with guaranteed starters, the idea would be, it might not work out like this, that I'd also have a few transfers saved. And remember, following last season, we can now save our transfers through a free hit. So let's say I've got 3 free transfers going into game week 6 and I free hit, I'll still have those transfers in game week 7. Then I can buy my Arsenal players. So that's one option. With the bench boost, basically Burnley are kind of key to how I'm setting up. They've got Sunderland at home in game week 2, Forest at home in 5, Leeds at home in 8. If Esteve and Dubravka are playing, I'm happy to bench boost them in any of those weeks. So I'm just going to wait and see what happens with Guiu at Sunderland. If he starts getting minutes, then maybe I just bench boost with him and my 2 Burnley players. Like in game week 8, for example, if I just quickly bring up Guiu here, I think Sunderland have got Wolves at home that week. Yeah, so potentially I've got 2 Burnley defenders against Leeds at home and then Guiu against Wolves at home. And then just another defender on the bench. Like that could work out. The problem with the bench boost is it's not worth a huge amount of points, so I don't want to put too much effort into using it. So what I don't see me doing is going super aggressive. Set up for bench boost game week 1. You know, take out one of the premiums to have a really good overall squad, then wild card in 4. That's a super aggressive strategy. I'm just not going to do that. So worst case scenario is Dubravka and or Guiu don't get good minutes. I can just worry about that later. And because we can roll transfers up to 5, and because we get topped up to 5 transfers for African Cup of Nations in game week 16, I'm not worried if I have to hold a slightly more expensive bench for a little while. So again, if we get to game week 8 and Dubravka and Esteve are going to play against Leeds at home, but Guiu's not going to play, I can just downgrade a premium and upgrade him and then just wildcard out of it, or wildcard into a bench boost and then use my saved up free transfers to get out of it. So bench boost, I know everyone's keen to use it in game week 1. I'm not so keen. I'd rather have a cheaper bench and a better 11 and just worry about it later. I'm not concerned right now. It's going to cause me loads of problems. And then triple captain, I'll just figure it out later. Honestly, you don't need to plan for that. You're always going to have a premium with a good fixture at some point. So there's no point in putting too much brain power into it. Haaland's got Burnley at home in 6. If I dead end, I could triple captain him. If I free hit, obviously I can't. But then he's got Leeds at home in 13, Sunderland at home in 15. Salah's got Burnley away in 4, Sunderland at home in 14. There's plenty of options I'm not going to worry about right now. So that's what I'm thinking about using my chips. If you enjoyed that video, please do hit that subscribe button. I'd love to hit 500k soon-ish, maybe before the end of the season. Make sure to give it a like if you found it useful. Like I said, I'll be doing these videos all throughout the season. And if you want to get your team rated for free, link in the description below for the My Team tool over on Fantasy Football Hub. I'll catch you again tomorrow for another video.